writers and creatives tend to kind of stay within themselves or want to stay in the background. So being in a position where you're kind of pouring your heart out and just letting it go, that it can be really scary, but you have to come to a point where you're sure within yourself and you know that this is what the story that you want to tell and this is what needs to be laid out, because I know that was kind of a hard part for me with my book. I wrote it 4 years ago, but I'm just now publishing because one, I had to make sure, okay, if I release a book like this, I need to be prepared for what might be said, or what if somebody doesn't like it. I have to be sure enough in myself to be able to take that and say, okay, everybody's not going to like it, but there are a lot of people out there who are going to be fans of it. And I had to know within myself that this was the right time that I needed to do it too, because timing is a big part of it as well.
That's beautiful. I want to explore what you just said in a little bit different direction. The integrity of what you write. If a person likes to hear themselves talk and they like to put their opinions out there, there's many expressions about everybody's got an opinion and so on and so forth. But if you're going to be writing something and it's not credible, if it's not factual, if it's even though it's fiction, there's a lot of things called historical fiction, which a lot of people like to read, where they read a novel that's based on history, and if it deviates too much from fact, then it's not going to be popular. It's not going to sell because it's too much of a make-believe story. I read a lot. I mean, I do a lot of audio. I've read thousands and thousands of books, or listened to thousands of books in my life. It's constant with me. And if I read something that's just a whole bunch of fluff and a person's strong opinion that I find is totally not credible, that's just that person's wrong facts, I'm not going to read that person anymore. So how about what you've done in the lynching calendar, as far as being truthful and honest, sticking to historical facts that are known facts that have been documented? What's the importance of staying factual and being credible?
It's important because those are, with the book like the lynching calendar, those are major key details in the story. So if you don't have those things laid out properly, it's going to throw off the entire plot. And then two, just what helped me was the way that I like to write is that I kind of get to know my characters a little bit. So even just how they speak in each story and getting their voices right, that helps bring the entire story to life, and it helps put you in the scene with them.
Jessica, I'm just sitting here feeling like I'm in the presence of someone that's going to be just a great person throughout their life, because I've always heard that people that write fiction, when they create characters, they bring something to life. They give birth to something. And so in your stories, so I take it that the lynching calendar is a compilation of separate independent stories. Is that fair to say?
Right.
Okay. Now it's a fictional novelette, you called it, but it's based on historical fact, correct?
Right.
Okay. So I want to know more, because I've never written a lot of fiction. I do a lot of historical documentation. I do a lot of like motivational type things that I draw from a lot of scripture to teach the things I teach. But you have created characters out of your imagination that have taken a life of their own, and you've put them into historical settings where things happen to them as if it was a real thing that really did happen. Is that correct?
Right. That's correct.
Would you, I think you understand that I'm in awe of you, that you have that ability to do that, because, I don't know how to ask this question any different than I'm going to spit it out right now. You've created people that have a full personality, a full life, full character, full moral content. How do you do that?
Well, I know for this particular one, like I said, I read a lot and I did a lot of genealogy. And for me, I've always been the type of person where I'll look at something, or maybe I'll just see somebody on the street and I'll just wonder, like, what is their story? And so that's kind of what I decided to do with each character in the book. I just wanted to, I already knew, okay, there's one person, they're the victim. There's somebody that, obviously lynched them. There's somebody that accused them. And, there's somebody, maybe an innocent bystander, relative, or whatever. And I just wanted to hear what is their story, in their perspective, what happened, or what is their interpretation of events. And so that's kind of how I explored all of that.
How do you keep your own emotions and feelings and your own values and so forth? How do you make separate characters that might not be who you are?
The way that I looked at it was as if I were sitting down and interviewing them. So I guess in a way it's like an out of body kind of thing, I guess. But I kind of just let the characters come to me. And it was like mentally, it was like I was asking them things that I would want to know about a person. And based off of the responses that I guess you would say that I was getting, that's how I kind of formed the characters, because there are a lot of characters in the book that are really opposite from me. One of the first stories, the boy, he's very religious, but I also have other stories where people they aren't believers at all. And so those are kind of more complicated characters, but it was just interesting to explore that part and explore how different they were and to play off of that.
Wow. Wow. So what you're making me kind of visualize as I'm listening to you is your ability to accept other people for the way they may be, even though it's different than the way you are, and the tolerance that comes from that ability to accept others has to be a key ingredient in the development of your characters.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's, I never thought of it that deeply before, but I've always wondered how some of the great writers that I've read. Are you familiar with, I think it's Jeffrey Archer, and he's got a trilogy it's a historical thing that goes all back. I can't remember the name of it, but he's an amazing writer, and his books are like 900 pages long. And then he does that trilogy that I'm speaking to. It starts off, I think, in World War I, then it goes to World War II, and then it goes to the modern age. That's a massive work there. But he's got so many characters, and I'm overwhelmed by a writer like that creates all these different personalities, because you're telling me that when you create characters, you might not know what they're going to do in a given situation until that situation presents itself for you to write about.
Right. But wow. The thing too is that I think it helps that, when you kind of know them, you kind of have an idea of, okay, I can kind of see they can go this way or that way based off of their personality.
Does it go out of your conscious mind somewhat, and they start behaving in a way that you're typing out that you're like surprised when it's over what happened?
Sometimes, yeah, it can be that way. They can, because it's just strange. Like it's like they're people, but they're not at the same time. And sometimes it can surprise you of the possibilities.
Wow. I've enjoyed this part of this conversation, Jessica, because when I said Jessica Revisited, I looked at my notes here. The last time that we were together was in September last year, I believe. But so that's been 5-7 months or so ago. Well, Jessica, you are definitely, moving forward with your life, with your career. Your maturity obviously was there before, but I guess it's getting even better. Let's take it back to now that we've shared what it's like to be a writer, to be thinking like a writer, to be creating characters and so forth. How much time have you spent writing things that you throw away that you're not satisfied with?
Honestly, I never really throw anything away. I just kind of just keep it and just sit it down for a minute. And a lot of times I can spend hours just kind of writing things out. And that's even with the lynching calendar. I wrote it and I just kind of let it marinate for a while. And that was literally years. And then I revisited it and kind of cleaned it up. And that was maybe like 2 or 3 months. And then that's when I felt like it was ready to be released.
I remember bringing out in one of our previous interviews that I said you had to have been like on the yearbook staff or on the school whatever they call the publishing. You were, weren't you? In high school, you were very involved in creative writing.
Yeah, I was actually. I did a lot of work in my English classes, and then I actually joined the newspaper when I was in college.
That's the word I was looking for, the newspaper. Yeah. Well, when you were talking about different places that you can go and how some people take a creative writing class or they go to a workshop or something, I'm really trying to go back to my don't quit your day job. It's very similar to grants. One of the big hot buttons in prisons with me is there's a lot of people that have read books where they talk about grants are like college scholarships. There's so many college scholarships that are waiting that nobody ever applies for. And there's all these salespeople that write a book on a subject that tell you, you can there's plenty of money out there for you. You just got to read this book and find out how to go apply for it because there's literally millions and millions of dollars that are unapplied for. Take that to the grant conversation, then we'll take it to the being a writer conversation. So I get the same idea where I actually found the book on the internet that I know a lot of people in prisons are reading. And it's a person that talked about that there's literally billions of dollars of grants that go unapplied for. And so all these people want to get grants. A common thing in a prison is, I heard that there's grants out there that are specific for people that have been a felon that's going to help them do this or that. And I go, yeah, there are. I guess there are. But the point I'm always saying is there's so much competition for these grants. And when you get right down to the application for a grant, they want to see your evidence that you've done certain things and have some results that you can show for what it is you're trying to do. And the point is this. Yeah, you can get a grant, but it might be 1 in 10,000 that you're going to be the one that gets that grant. And if you're depending on that income from that grant, you might not be able to feed your family because, it's not exactly like the young person that goes to New York and wants to be a professional actress or actor and they work in restaurants to support themselves while they're trying to get every little role they can get until they get their resume filled up and get that big role. I think being a writer for a living is what I'm trying to talk about. If you want to be a writer, I want to say this, and I'd like you to speak to this point. Do it because you want to do it, because you've got something in you that needs to be expressed, that needs to be come out, a story that needs to be told. But if you're doing it to make money, you might find that it's a very, very difficult road to hoe. And so if it's not a labor of love and that you're finding a way to support yourself while you're doing your writing, I would guess that almost every world famous successful writer didn't do it for the money, but once they started doing it, they had to keep doing it and the money followed.
That's an interesting thought. But I do agree with you where, you say you have to love it. Because like you said, it's not easy. Money doesn't always come in, especially when you're first starting out. And so you have to be open to doing other things, which is why, a lot of times I tell people, if you're a writer, don't just think, oh, I just write books or, something like that. Open yourself up to other avenues of writing, because then that kind of, you have more of a chance of, getting more opportunities that way. And you do really have to be passionate, because if you don't care about writing, it's going to be hard for you to work day in and day out doing it.
If you were to lay out a 5-6 step that it would take if you want to become a professional writer and make a livelihood from it, what would the 5 or 6, or you can do 4, you can do 10 steps, but what would the steps be so that you can really have the best chance if you want to be a professional writer as your livelihood?
Well, first, like you were saying, make sure that it's something that you're passionate about and that you really want to do. Because if it's not